Berta Caceres was sentenced to 25 years in prison for the murder of Honduran environmental activist Berta Caceres. 2 people died and dozens more were injured after a train collision at a village in the west of the Czech Republic. 4 people were killed and 20 wounded in Kabul in a coordinated bomb and gun attack targeting the Afghan defense minister and lawmakers. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, I'm Ray Gomez. The Honduran Public Prosecutor's Office confirmed a 25-year prison sentence against Berta Caceres for the murder of environmental activist Berta Caceres. The prison sentence was requested by Caceres' family and overruled the defense petition of a 20-year minimum condition. Berta Caceres, executive of the company Desarrollos Energéticos S.A., known as DESA, was found guilty last June 5th by the sentencing court as a co-perpetrator of the murder of the environmental defender. In December 2019, a Honduran court sentenced 4 out of 8 defendants to 34 years in prison for the murder of Caceres. The others, 3 others, were sentenced to 30 years in prison as co-perpetrators of the crime. Berta Caceres was shot dead on March 2, 2016 in her home for her opposition to the construction of the Aguasarca hydroelectric dam in the Rio Blanco community. Religious leaders are now the focus of Haiti's investigation into the assassination of President Jovenel Moise, which has plunged the country into unprecedented chaos. Port-au-Prince State Attorney Claude Bedford has issued search warrants against 2 political leaders, 2 religious leaders, and 1 businessman. According to the document issued by Bedford, Roland Calipari, leader Alain Balthazar, and former Prime Minister Paul Dennis, together with the religious leaders Robert and Gerard Forge and businessmen Simon Handel, are wanted for murder, attempted murder, and armed attack against the president. A separate warrant has also been issued against former Supreme Court Justice Wendell Telot. China urged the United States to listen to the appeal of the international community to immediately lift the sanctions and blockade against Cuba and to stop making excuses to engage in gross interference and destabilization. On July 30th, the U.S. Treasury Department announced sanctions against Cuba's National Revolutionary Police and its top 2 officials, citing repression of anti-government protests. During a meeting with the Cuban-American figures at the White House, President Joe Biden said that there would be more sanctions unless there's some drastic change in Cuba. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson said that this country firmly opposes any move to arbitrarily impose unilateral sanctions and interfere in other countries' internal affairs under the pretext of so-called freedom, human rights, and democracy. Violence continues in the northwest of Paraguay after the shutdown between armed groups and that operate in Concepcion. On Tuesday night, a police commissioner was assaulted. 2 people died, one of them the deputy chief of police of San Alfredo, and a 3rd person was wounded. In the previous days, the Paraguayan West has been rattled by a wave of violence. Only last July, 33 effectives of the National Army Joint Task Force lost their lives. In this same region, 2 men died in a presumed standoff. The Army identified them as members of the guerrilla group Ejército de Mariscal López. One of them was recognized as Alejandro Ramos Morel, son of Alejandro Ramos, a leader and former member of the Ejército del Pueblo Paraguayo, the Paraguayan People's Army. Authorities have yet to confirm or deny the link between the recent attack and the later events, although they said to be considering all possibilities.
During the course of this night, at around 1900 hours, we, the patrol personnel, were doing our normal routes until in the path of San Alfredo and Ruta Valle Ninja, we were ambushed. The patrol car, as you can see, suffered many gunshots impacts on the right side, which is the co-pilot seat. Sadly, our deputy chief of police died, and also another fellow police member who we found near a reservoir. He was missing and we thought we would find him alive, but sadly this wasn't so.
The Constitutional Convention that will draft the new Chilean Magna Carta completes its first month of operation and submitted to the Parliament a declaration in favor of pardoning the prisoners of the 2019 social protests. According to the Convention's president, Elisa Loncon, the legislative body worked tirelessly to organize the working stages, the regulations that will govern its management, in the preparation of the infrastructure, and even in a health protocol to work in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. It also approved the declaration demanding from the government pardon hundreds of young people imprisoned after the social outbreak of late 2019. According to Loncon, on September, they will start the proposal of new constitution for the country. We'll be right back after this very short break. Welcome back. 2 people died and dozens of more were injured on Wednesday when 2 trains collided at a village in the west of the Czech Republic. The Munich-Prague train collided with the regional service. Czech transport minister said the train did not respect the signal and clashed into the regional transportation. The police stated that the accident happened early in the morning at Milivace. 31 people whose lives are not in danger are being treated in hospitals, and 7 are in a critical state. In July this year, 2 other trains clashed, leaving 3 people dead and dozens injured. A man threatened to blow up a grenade in the headquarters of the Kyiv government was neutralized by Ukrainian police, reported the Ministry of Homeland Affairs. After the detention, local police spokesperson Artyom Shevchenko assured that the authorities are still trying to clarify whether or not the grenade is truly effective. Special forces involved in the attacks flooded the government building and reduced the assailant, who said he wouldn't get out alive of the place until some parliament members heard what he had to say. In the second week of deadly fires in Turkey, the rescuers used helicopters and water cannon to beat back fires encircling a power plant on Wednesday. The recent situation has tested the leadership of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. More than 170 wildfires have scorched through Turkey's southern coast and killed 8 people. The blazes have destroyed forests and thousands of cattle. Their location around the country's main vacation destinations have also dented government hopes of a tourist-driven revival of the fragile economy. The European Union's satellite monitoring service said their equipment to measure fire's intensity has reached unprecedented values in the entire dataset, which goes back to 2003. The United States and Russia clashed once again over the Stefan allowed their respective embassies, despite the latest talks aimed at bringing more stability to the turbulent relationship. The Russian Foreign Minister's spokeswoman, Maria Zakharova, denounced the United States is acting outside the legal framework by uniquely limiting its diplomats to 3-year visas. In an interview, the Russian ambassador in Washington, Anatoly Antonov, deployed the expulsions of his country's diplomats, saying the U.S. had become persistent and creative in this business by seizing Russian diplomatic assets. He also mentioned receiving a list of 24 diplomats who are expected to leave the U.S. before September the 3rd. Almost all of them will have without replacements because Washington has abruptly tightened visa issuance procedures. United States President Joe Biden stated that New York Governor Andrew Cuomo should resign after an independent investigation found he sexually harassed several women. The investigation concluded that the governor engaged in a pattern of abusive behavior, creating a hostile work environment for his victims.
On him to resign, given the investigators said the 11 women were credible?
I stand by that statement.
Are you now calling on him to resign?
Yes.
And if he doesn't resign, do you believe he should be impeached and removed from office?
Let's take one thing at a time here. I think he should resign. I understand that the state legislature may decide to impeach. I don't know that for a fact. I've not read all that data.
On his part, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has denied all wrongdoing and indicated he will not step down.
I now understand that there are generational or cultural perspectives that, frankly, I hadn't fully appreciated. And I have learned from this. And I have brought in an expert to design a new sexual harassment policy and procedures, and to train the whole team, myself included. I accept responsibility, and we are making changes.
A police officer was killed and several other people were injured in an attack outside the Pentagon, forcing the building to go briefly into lockdown. A gunman burst through a security checkpoint into U.S. Capitol and caused a terrifying exchange of fire that sent panicked bystanders diving for cover. The building was briefly put on lockdown as police responded to the incident. The head of the Pentagon's police force stated that the FBI was assisting in the investigation but declined to speculate on a motive for the attack or to say whether the assailant was in custody. The shootings were the first in the Capitol in 44 years and the worst since Congress convened in the building in 1800. As part of the development strategy for vaccines against COVID-19, Cuba administered over 10 million doses of its home-brewed Tala and Soberana vaccines, as well as the other candidates still in different phases of clinical trials. According to the information from the Ministry of Public Health, over 10,061,000 doses had been administered by August 1st in different provinces like Havana, Matanzas, and Santiago de Cuba, where the sanitary issues was more complex than the rest. It was noted that the Department of Primary Care of the Public Health Ministry ended the Aptala vaccination in the 15 municipalities of the capital, having inoculated over 1,300,000 people, around 10% of the country's population. On Wednesday, China registered its highest daily number of local coronavirus cases in months, as mass testing and contact tracing campaigns uncovered the 12 of Delta variant infections. Health authorities have reported 71 domestic cases on Wednesday, the highest since January. Wuhan, where the virus first was detected in 2019, reported its first local infections in over a year this week, and all 11 million residents are being tested. Meanwhile, Nanjing has tested its 9.2 million residents 3 times after shutting down gyms and cinemas and closing off residential compounds. At least 6 residential communities in Beijing-Haidian district were quarantined on Monday. Flights, trains, and buses from affected regions have been suspended.
From July 31st, since the start of recording cases, our province has recorded a total of 15 locally confirmed cases. 11 of those 15 locally confirmed cases are asymptomatic. On August 3rd, we recorded 9 new locally confirmed cases, of which 3 were asymptomatic. The recorded cases on the 2nd of August and the 9 new cases confirmed on the 3rd of August, including the 3 asymptomatic cases, are all workers from the same construction site.
The World Health Organization called for a moratorium on COVID-19 vaccine booster shots until at least the end of September to address the drastic inequity in dose distribution between rich and poor nations.
We need an urgent reversal from the majority of vaccines going to high-income countries to the majority going to low-income countries. Accordingly, WHO is calling for a moratorium on boosters until at least the end of September to enable at least 10% of the population of every country to be vaccinated.
We have more stories coming up after this final short break. Welcome back. 4 people were killed and 20 wounded in a coordinated bomb and gun attack targeting the Afghan defense minister and several lawmakers in the country's capital. The wave of blasts came as the Afghan army urged residents to evacuate the besieged southern city ahead of a planned offensive against the insurgents after 3 days of heavy fighting. Violence has surged across the country since early May, when the Taliban launched a nationwide offensive soon after the United States troops began their final withdrawal. Defense Minister Bismillah Mahmadi said the first bomb blew up in central Kabul, and it was a suicide car bomb attack targeting his house. Afghan Foreign Minister Mohammad Hanif Atama spoke to his Indian counterpart about convening emergency United Nations Security Council session on the current Afghanistan situation. Since India hosts the presidency of the UN Security Council for the month of August, the Afghan diplomat spoke with its foreign minister to discuss ways to stop the Taliban's violence and human rights abuses in his country. In a statement, the Afghan Foreign Ministry said the Taliban's attacks in collusion with foreign fighters and terrorist groups are a violation of international law and have terrible consequences of the region's stability and security. Lebanon woke up silently on Wednesday as it commemorated the first anniversary of the Port of Beirut blast on August 4, 2020, which resulted in 200 people dead and many more without residence. Up to date, the causes of the explosion haven't been determined, and no one has been held accountable. The blasts were caused by more than 2,000 tons of ammonium nitrate stored in the main port, where all sorts of articles and humanitarian aid usually arrive. The event led to a massive wave of protests and a constitutional or institutional crisis that not only perseveres a year after the tragedy, but also increases in magnitude and intensity. Humanitarian groups and international experts claim this is one of the deadliest blasts in history due to its general destruction and the suffering it brought. Today, a conference led by the United Nations and France requested again the investigation results and the renewal of international alliances regarding aid towards Lebanon's situation. French President Emmanuel Macron stated the following.
I can announce today that we will, in the next 12 months, put in place nearly 100 million euros of new commitments in direct support of the population of Lebanon, as far as France is concerned. This aid will be focused on education, with exceptional support for families, pupils, and students. It would cover food aid, and we will also increase our agricultural support in this context. Health will also remain an absolute priority, and I would like to announce that 500,000 doses of vaccines against COVID will be sent in the next few weeks, so during the month of August.
Pope Francis returned to his full-time schedule on Wednesday after his colon operation. The religious authority urged the international community to help the struggling Lebanese population.
1 year after the terrible explosion in Beirut, the capital of Lebanon, which caused death and destruction, my thoughts go out to that dear country, especially to the victims, their families, the many injured, those who lost their homes and their jobs. Today I am also appealing to the international community, asking them to help Lebanon along a path of resurrection, with concrete gestures and not just words.
Israeli communities near the Lebanese border reported rocket attacks on their lands. Israeli military responded by firing artillery shells to Lebanese territory without saying of which were the designated targets. Commander of Lebanese Armed Forces and incumbent president of the country, General Hafez said the Lebanon would not allow any provocations from Israel, nor would they concede that Tel Aviv take advantage of Beirut's crisis to create instability. We keep an eye on our border to to confront the Israeli enemy's danger, which has recently stepped up its aggressiveness against Lebanon and threatened to wage a new war, said the chief who aimed Lebanon's current financial and political breakdown, has sworn the military will remain a prioritized strong arm of the nation's defense. We go to Syria, where the driver of a military transportation bus died and others were injured after the explosion of the vehicle. The event took place at the entrance of the Masagan al-Haraz Barad in the outskirts of Damascus on Wednesday morning. Preliminary reports showed the disaster was caused by a short circuit that triggered an explosion in the fuel container of the bus. Authorities are still evaluating the circumstances and that led to the tragedy, which resulted in the loss of one life. The injured are being tended to in local health centers. In Ethiopia, at least 254,000 people were displaced due to the advantage of the Tigray Popular Liberation Front in the north of the country. The displacements have occurred in the Tigray neighboring regions of Hamara and Alvar, where since of last year and a conflict scenario lingers between the Ethiopian government troops and the opposite Tigray Popular Liberation Front. This comes at the time when 350 civilians in Tigray are at imminent risk of chronic starvation due to lack of supplies, stable agriculture, usable lands, and distribution circuits cut off by the active war zones. We've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at teleSUR English. And you can also follow us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. Plus, you can catch up our shows, our YouTube channel. For teleSUR English, I'm Berta Caceres. Thank you for watching.